Anyway, the reason we're here today, Patsy, is
yes, we want ideas. I have Ray has received one from, oh, what's Jonathan's second name, right?
Jonathan Jukes.
J-E-W.
Yeah, Jukes.
Jukes. Okay. He is offering to give us a talk and a session on Dr. William Price and cremation. He appears to have. Did he bring the concept of cremation to Bristol? Was that? Yeah. So not perhaps cheerful, but I think it sounds to me as if Jonathan will make it as light as possible as a subject. You know?
He said that this man is an amazing person, you know? So
Right.
I thought, yeah, we could do a little bit of amazing.
So, do you want to take it in turns to come up with ideas or suggestions that you might have thought? You can suggest other people. I know it's a craven thing to do, but you can just plain suggest other people, and I will see if I can get them to agree to come if you like. Don't all speak at once, though.
Yeah, well, I'm asking Graham because Graham did, I think, volunteer to give a talk about the background to the war in Ukraine, and I think that's something I would very much like to hear because it's horrendous.
You wanted about a couple of weeks to prepare, didn't you, Graham?
I think I said 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Yes.
At the moment, I prefer to have 3 months, but
yes, but things change all the time, so you'd still need another 3 weeks.
Yes. Okay.
So, but seriously, you would rather, for example, it didn't go down as a talk for.
No. Put it down for a date towards the end of April.
Okay.
And tell me what date you've chosen.
Oh, I will. Don't worry. I was just waiting until we had this bit of a get together today. You know.
Yes. Okay. No, I should be able to do any date in April, actually.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. Angela, do you know how long you'll need before you give yours?
Well, I came across something, a slideshow, I think it's called now, that I did in China, that I actually did. And my daughter's coming tomorrow. Now, she's got a long list of help I need, but if she is able to show me how to put that slideshow onto this iPad so that I can, and to give me some idea about what I do, you know, what button I press, then I could do something, but let's say sometime in April, not in March, because it'll take, she'll say, Mum, all you need to do is da, 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 da. Now, da, 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 da takes her 30 seconds. Da, 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 da might take me 3 months to understand what she means. And her daughter and my other granddaughters are now in Australia. So in the past, I could say, oh, your mum says, all I've got to do is that. What do I do? And my granddaughter, Marisa, would say, Grandma, all you need to do is da, da, da. And I'd say, well, okay, Marisa, I'll do da, da. You do da, da, da again. Then I'll do da, 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 da. And if it works, I'll write it down because that's the only way I can remember how to do anything on any technology. But she's in Australia working. So, yeah, so let's be optimistic like Graham and say sometime in April I could do, it'll be called, working in China, I think. Well, it was something I did, as far as I remember, with someone called Christine, who was also an early years education specialist in Guangzhou. And Confucius is the first person in China who said everyone needs an education. Well, Robert Owen, the factory owner, did start a kindergarten and person in the UK. So it's a sort of short thing saying, well, you said, Confucius said this, and I got the Chinese as though I really can read Chinese. I can't. Someone did at GPNU did that. So it could be quite interesting because it's genuine. It looks as though I'm impressive, but I'm not. I just love finding out about how different countries approach educating very young minds. So I can do that sometime in April.
I have just had an idea listening to you and thinking about Ray. How about how would you two, at some point in the future, would you like to consider some kind of debate between you? Because education is something of great importance to both of you in your lives. If we could come up with a suitable focus for that, or you could maybe between you, maybe there's an issue about education that you hold opposite positions on.
Well, my experience over long years is there's a left-wing way of doing education and there's a right-wing way of doing education. Left-wing means state education, right-wing means Eton, and I don't think Ray is on that wavelength. I don't want to debate anything, in my mind, Eton would be a specialist centre for young people who'd had a rough deal in life. It would be entirely free and it would have the best in the whole country. Eton does at the moment, but it's just a small section of the population. I'd open it up to ordinary people, young children who've had a really tough deal in life. So that's my revolution, but I'm not sure you want to hear it.
I'm with Finland in the terms of education, where they have passed a law in their parliament that says it is illegal to charge for education.
I remember that. Yeah, it's brilliant.
I think it's one of the most. That's the thing I would, if I was in government, I would do tomorrow. Because it's, to me, education is too important to be left by fee-paying wazzocks.
Yeah. An awful lot of MPs will immediately be out of a job in your revolution, Ray.
Oh, they would. A lot of them do send their children there. So. Yes, but a lot of government ministers now have worked out that they can get the government to pay them to send their children to private education. If they are too important, too busy to actually send their children to the ordinary state school, you can get the government to pay for send your children to.
You couldn't make it up, could you?
It's an absolute disgrace. But there you go. I could rant all day and stuff like that.
I think Graham's trying to intercede.
Well, the first point in that direction is to remove charitable status from independent schools, because at the moment we are all supporting Eton and other schools like that through their ability to get gift aid as a charity. They're not a charity, they are independent private businesses which ought to pay corporation tax, not receive gift aid from us.
That's the thing which I would remove also from the lexicon is them calling themselves public schools. There's nothing public about them at all. It's a nice sobriquet that they use.
I think we could have a great debate on education, but I don't know.
This one we'd all agree on, I think.
I think we'd all agree.
Well, usually the government makes any changes to education as part of the budget. So maybe thinking ahead sometime in April, we could have a debate, maybe putting forward the sorts of views we've put forward and comparing it with what the government's proposing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they're going to say, but maybe that might be a possibility. We'll all be so furious, I expect. There'll be, you know, heat coming out of our ears.
Making a note of that anyway.
I think it would be interesting if we had one or more sessions on education to share our own experience of education, even though it was a long time ago, and in what ways we benefited from it, and in what ways it could have been very much better for us.
That's a good one. I'm just writing. Sorry to take so long, but I never did learn shorthand. I refused. And in my day, it was very much the thing to encourage girls to do shorthand because it made us into such good secretaries. And I've always, resisted. Of course, I've ended up, in fact, doing loads of jobs in my time, which are really, strictly speaking, secretarial. But I didn't see myself as a secretary. Anyway,
yeah. I was a secretary, and I'm left-handed, so I learnt shorthand, but the strokes depend on movement. As a left-hander, I have spent my entire life turning a right-handed world to mine. So when the stroke went that way for a right-hander, I would do it that way. So I could never read, but I had a very retentive memory. So I used to do shorthand, but I could remember what my boss had dictated and usually improve the English because I was very good at English, particularly when I worked in America.
Yes, that's the point, David. Something be very interesting will be if you could talk to us about what you found about the differences. I mean, how much experience of American education could you draw upon? I mean,
you're talking to David, not me, because I was a secretary. Yeah.
Well, the only real experience, I mean, apart from seeing kids in the streets out there, the only real experience I've got was living at Maharishi International University, which is completely different to education anywhere. It's a wonderful education model. I would love to talk about it, but it's to do with the shift from thinking of the universe as material with consciousness somehow emerging at the end of billions of years of evolution to thinking of the universe as totally conscious with matter emerging as a sort of afterthought so that consciousness can appear to be split up into separate pieces. And there you're talking about, I mean, that is the biggest paradigm shift in the world, to shift from our material view, which dominates everything, including our religions, really, because we're so conditioned to a consciousness-based worldview. And Maharishi International University was teaching consciousness-based education. That was the point. It was the first word. It was the first focus. Meaning, normally you can think of education as being a load of stuff that you want your students to learn. So the focus is on the knowledge. And in consciousness-based education, you've got two other things to think about. And what that is the knower themselves, to focus on the learner. And then the process of learning. And it creates a dramatically different education. It was associated with the university, there was a school, kids' school, and that made the community very popular because it was one of the few places that you as a single parent could take refuge in, because single parents would come. They wanted their kids to be in a place that was safe, that didn't have guns and drugs. So you'd have people coming from proper families, but also a fair number of single parents with a child who they just wanted, I want a good education for my child. And I don't want them to go to school where they have guns and drugs. So anyway, yeah. That's
David, can I just take you up? You talk about proper families. You imply it's two parents. Obviously, my two daughters grew up in an improper family because I was a single parent from when my youngest was age 7. So I dispute your use of the word improper family. I did not have a improper family. I love my daughters. They had good contact with their father and their grandparents, very proper.
Your point taken and entirely understood.
No, I was just thinking how exciting it would be if we could start again with the whole concept of education. You know, what the heck are we trying to do? You know, well, I mean, I'm sure someone's done this before, but you know, listening to all of you, I'm just thinking it's what we've got is completely mad. You know, we really do need to start again and think which elements do we actually want people to have as they, you know, we learn best, don't we, in the first, is it 5 years of our life? You know, are we, I don't know. I think of what I really value, and it's ludicrous, it's not like me as a person that I think of at all, but what I really value is that before I could go to school, I was numerate, and I could read, and I could do numbers, and I quickly learnt my tables, and those are not, you know, I wouldn't dream of putting those in a high place alongside any of the things David was mentioning. I really wouldn't, and yet those are skills. Those have really stood me in good stead. Which just what I mean is it's just so complex. I mean, I've never been. I don't know. I've never considered it before, but I'm looking at it now, and I'm thinking, how on earth would you plan perfect education where you did include the skills that really make life easier later on? You know, being able to count, being able to read and spell, and so on, and a greater awareness of your position in the universe, of what it means to be human as opposed to a tree, which is something that's occurred to me now I'm, you know, nearing the end of my days. I think about things like that quite a lot, but what difference would it have made if I'd got to think about them when I was a child? I don't, you know, I just think that it's an exciting debate, that's all.
There's a book on biology or something in which the dedication goes, I would like to thank my parents for raising me as a vertebrate. So that would exclude trees, but
Angela.
I like that.
Well, when I was an infant teacher and then an infant head teacher, the Labour Party was in power, and it was about educating the whole child in the early years, which was called the foundation stage. And I used to go to China, and Confucius said it whenever Confucius was alive. And that was something that is a bit that I will touch on in this, you know, thing I've already prepared that I'm going to do sometime in April. So, but I think what's so brilliant is if we all do an education session, I think they will go on, you know, following up, because it's so important. Now we're grandparents, you know, you can see it.
Yeah.
You know, as the French say, the more things change, the more they stay the same, or something like that. You know.
Yeah, we.
Well, I think we could have several sessions on education looking at this. has anyone thought of anything else that, as I say, it's not just subjects, but people too. Yeah, Graham.
I don't think we've had a talk, have we, from anybody from either Frenchay or Horfield? Certainly Roger Angerson at Frenchay used to give talks on historical issues, and he would be quite good to listen to, I think. But he may know other people at Frenchay meeting who've got varied experience, which it would be good to share. And similarly at Horfield, where I could ask Karen, my daughter, about the interesting characters at Horfield meeting who would have something to say for us. I'm all in favour of this small, disappointingly small group putting on things which ought to be of interest to all 450 adult people associated with Bristol Quakers.
With apropos Roger Angerston, you would have to get someone else who has a computer, as Roger is one of the very few people I know who's not online and doesn't have a actual computer himself. Roger is an amazing chap. He's funny, he is erudite, and yes, I think I'd like to hear from him. But as I say, it would have to go to someone else's house to actually speak to us.
What was I didn't catch his second name. Roger.
You're muted, Graham.
Oh.
It's Angerson, the word anger with S-O-N on the end.
And I think you said someone else at Frenchay as well.
Well, I don't know friends at Frenchay, and Roger, of course, would. So he might make one or two suggestions of other people at Frenchay who have something interesting or controversial to say.
And of course they might bring some other members of Frenchay meeting with them. So
provided they had computers, yes.
Oh dear. Right, okay. But I didn't get the name of the person at Horfield. Who did you think would be a good person from Horfield?
His daughter.
Daughter Karen, who has had quite an interesting life, but I don't think she would be willing to talk about it. But of course, she knows other friends at Horfield meeting who may well be worth inviting to speak to us.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea, because you're right. There are two meetings that are least. Well, I don't know if the people come at all. I mean, Jonathan, who's offered us this talk on William Price, said he can't get to these meetings, but he often listens to them later on. Once they've been put online. And I mean, see, we don't know. Well, I don't know. Can you tell, David? You can tell how many sort of hits we get.
Yeah. Well, anytime you look at one of the videos, it gives you the number of hits. But I've got the list of all the videos, and therefore I've got the list of all the hits. And some of them, some of them are in the 30s, 40s, 50s. They sort of actually clacking up there. And recently, I interrupt this meeting on speakers to give a little bit of background. Since we shifted to publishing them as searchable and findable, it hasn't caused any problems. The worst thing that's happened is we got 3 stupid comments on one, which were just random spam, and I just deleted them. But apart from that, where nobody's trolling us, nobody seems to be taking offense at anything we publish. So I'm quite happy about that. And I've started editing out. I used to, just for my own sanity and peace of mind, I had the dates at the start of the titles so that they would sort in order and I could see where everything was. and I've started taking the dates out of the titles, so the talks kind of stand on their own. You know, they're no longer news items. You know, is this a new one or an old one kind of thing? It's here's a talk about something or other. It makes the titles a bit so, and sometimes I just sort of, I just started doing that with more recent ones, and then I went back through an old ones and knocked the dates out. I haven't done it comprehensively yet, but so that's sort of a little bit of background on my stewardship of curating of our collection, and just small changes. But last night I had I went to the Green Capital Green Mingle meeting at Bristol Beacon, which is a bit of a, you know, what's the Bristol Beacon? Where's that? You know, but I managed to figure out what the Bristol Beacon was and where it was. Oh, you mean Colston Hall? Yeah, but we threw him in the river, didn't we? So Bristol Beacon is fine by me. And Richard Drake was there, and we had a good chat about what's the is it Quaker Voice, the newsletter that gets sent out? The name escapes me for a moment. Is that it? What's it called?
Anyone know? No.
Whatever. The Friend or something.
Oh, the Friend. There's
Yeah,
the Friend. Yeah.
Okay, it's the Friend. That'll be it. And he was encouraging me to that we make this more inclusive of other centres. And I said I was starting to stop calling it Bristol Central Quakers Friday discussion group.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind now, it's just Quaker chat, right?
So, yeah.
Just keeps it simple. And well, and you know, I'm getting more used to taking a recording and throwing it up there and getting on with something else. And I'm starting to do this for other groups. But I see that so a lot of things came out of talking with Richard last night. And I've already mentioned that it would be good, to my mind, that we have a talk on Extinction Rebellion, which we haven't had yet. And there's a lot of Quakers involved in Extinction Rebellion. And I was suggesting two names, and I think it would be quite interesting to ask them both to speak together, like we did with Bamford, which is Julia Bush and Joe Flanagan. And XR are planning a big event in London on April 21. So my thought would have to be at least a couple of weeks before that, so that, you know, it can be in that context, even though I'm not particularly personally excited about going and shouting at the government. I think protest has to be done and made visible. I just don't think the answers are going to come from our government.
What was the second name, David? I got Julia Bush, but who was
Joe Flanagan.
Joe Flanagan.
And somewhere or other, I sent you an email with their emails in it, and which I also sent to both of them. So because I put one of their, I was trying to remember their name, and ended up putting their email address in the CC list and leaving it there, so it got sent to one of them. So I had to send a sort of cover-up letter to you saying, well, I think both of them, I've sent this one to Joe already by mistake and put Julia's email in as well. So they're half primed.
Right, that's brilliant. That's great.
I think that'd be good. But the other thing, so this week has been the big launch of City Leap, which is going to have a big impact on the city in the next 10 years. This is 400 million being spent on a heat network, but they're looking to spend the same again on other things in the city. I'm not quite sure how much I love it, but I went with a kind of colleague to visit them 2 days ago, and to make peace with them, because I've in part campaigned against City Leap. It's a private finance initiative, and I think they are iniquitous and wrong. And I think awarding exclusive contracts to multinationals who aren't even based in Bristol is insane.
I agree with that. Yeah.
But the council are doing it. So, little piece of background. The point is the council screwed up on a project called Warm Up Bristol. They screwed up on a project called Bristol Energy. In fact, they screw up on nearly everything they do on a half-decent scale. And when they said we need money from outside to do renewables in Bristol, they set out this prospectus and said we want help. And they, what about this and what about that? Is anybody interested? And they ended up with this offer from the Swedish national energy company, Vattenfall, saying, we can build you a district heat network in the center of town. And we've already done it in Amsterdam, Copenhagen, and other places. So, and we can guarantee that we can deliver it and that people will get cheaper heat as a result of it. So it's so de-risked from the council's point of view that and it's the only thing they've really gone for. It's like, we don't do anything else. We'll do this. There isn't a risk, but it is going to have an impact. It's going to create miles of roadworks, but it will create jobs and things like that. And what I went along with a lady called Iris Partridge to talk about the idea of making, and this is where it comes all the way to Quakers, the idea of making community centres more resilient. So the government has asked that we have warm places for people to be able to go to in the cold. And Bristol City Council has a map of warm places that you can go to. Iris's point is, if we have a real emergency and the power is out, these places will be cold because they'll be out of power. And like as not, and even people like us who think, well, we're right at Central, we've got solar panels and a battery. If the power goes out, we're all right. Not so. Most solar power systems, even with storage and batteries, don't actually work when the mains isn't connected to them. And people just assume, oh, I've got batteries, and don't do the extra work. Say, does this work when the power is out? Oh no. So
why wouldn't they work when if you restored the power?
Well, the whole system. The point is, your solar is what's grid connected, right? The point is, what you don't use goes out onto the grid. You're saying, oh no, I keep mine on a battery, but you still can't charge all the time. But the device that switches you from the battery, and the solar panels and the battery are both DC. And what switches it from DC to AC is a thing called I was going to say alternator. It's not called that. Anyway, it doesn't matter what it's called. And
converter.
That's it. Yeah. It requires the mains frequency. It uses the mains as its pulse. So it tunes into the mains. It has to deliver electricity to the mains at the mains' frequency. And if you haven't, if the mains isn't there, some of them just say, well, why should I bother? What am I supposed to do? They don't have a sort of standby ticker. So her idea is to create community centres that are super resilient. And most communities have neither the funds or the experience or, or the staff to do that kind of thing. So it becomes an extra initiative, and it could be funded in part by the council as a sort of strategic thing for being resilient against rough stuff. So there are a few topics around City Leap that will be worth talking about. But, Quakers are operating a bunch of community centres across town, which should be thinking, how resilient are we? So, Iris is forming a network of a resilience network, I think is what she calls it. And we should be, I think we should be early members of that, considering and what we do here is part of building resilient communities as well, and more activities that communities can be involved in one way or another. So I was turning my head to that too. And I've got a few ideas for actual talks as well, but no need to bother about that here. One that's coming up that will affect people a lot: artificial intelligence. And but the other one is, Richard was saying that they have young people coming to Redland. They've got a new group of young people coming to Redland, and the first thing they say is, what do you do? What is it you're actually doing in Quaker meeting? When you sit down, what do you do? Are you meditating or mindfulness, or what is it? What's it all about? What do Quakers actually do? And they're quite interested in that. And I think there's potential for talking about spiritual practice in Quakers. And the other one that Richard and I had quite a talk about was the Quaker way of discernment and dialogue. And coming out of our cozy little shell and acknowledging that Quakers have got something of an inside line on participative communities. And actually, when I think, how would you teach this to people? It's actually the best source on both of these things that I've mentioned. The best generic teaching source on this is a thing called Theory U, which is coming from MIT, and not a Quaker, but a guy who grew up on a Steiner trained German called Otto Scharmer. And he has a way of teaching groups to interact and listen and innovate more deeply. So Quakers would be able to talk about that. Scharmer has turned it into a formal teaching practice called Theory U, into a worldwide network of centers who are running what's called ULabs, and who have a way of teaching people to listen more deeply so that dialogues are more productive. So actually, I'm talking, having decided to call this Quaker Chat, I'm talking about how you get away from chat to conversations that are transformational.
You just mentioned a person there, David, who immediately raises my hackles to enormous heights. And that's Rudolf Steiner. I hate the man with a passion.
Okay.
He is an absolute useless charlatan who had conned people for too many years to be able to get away with it without due anger from people like me.
Okay, so we'll count you out for open dialogue, shall we? The man Otto Scharmer grew up on a biodynamic farm, and I have nothing but respect for biodynamic farming. So I'm happy to debate it with you, Ray. I'm happy.
No, it's not. It's not.
Happy to
It's
dialogue.
not biodramatic farming. It's the Rudolf Steiner and his schools and his actual way of life, which I think are terrible. And
okay, well, jolly good. I know that the more polarized we are in our opinions and the less accepting we are of others' opinions, the more fragmented our societies become. So I would encourage you to be a little bit more open. I know wonderful, wonderful children who have come from Steiner schools. So I would.
In the likewise, David, I have known quite a number of children who have been totally screwed up by Steiner schools and have come to my places where I used to work.
Okay, so there's room for dialogue about what does make education effective and what really nurtures children. And religions per se have got, a lot to answer for. And we have to heal our society. We have to open ourselves up to be looking at things that really work. And so I don't want to walk away after your little explosion there, having ignored what Otto Scharmer is doing in the world with Theory U, because Theory U isn't a Steiner thing at all. And I think that we have to find a way of doing dialogue in our communities. Otherwise, things like this massive investment in City Leap are going to happen, and we're going to end up with a multinational owning a district heat network in the city, rather than the city and its community owning its renewable energy resources. So there's big stuff happening over the next 10 years. And unless we shape up and start becoming genuinely effective, we're selling our communities down the drain. And I want to see us wake up and shake up and be open to real dialogue and, frankly, not be exclusive.
Angela,
I just think that whatever subject we are talking about, the United Kingdom is very much a disunited kingdom and always has been. There will be different views, polarized views, on any topic that we discuss. And I think what humans living on this island need to do is to have an education system where we learn to respect and put forward alternatives that are listened to, and then decisions are made on the basis of cooperation and discussion, not, I'll kill you if you disagree with me, which is what is the basis of most wars, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think there's a basis for looking at fundamentals, which any discussion really of education is going to, or religion is going to do that. But it's how it's done. And maybe, the way we've done it is people giving a talk on an aspect, and then it's open for discussion to put forward different views, to ask questions. And from that, then we often have a follow-up, which is someone with a different point of view. That seems to me to be about democracy and about listening to each other. So I think it's fairly fundamental how we structure these hour-long sessions.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I'm mentioning Theory U, because I take Otto Scharmer's course pretty much every year, which means I get to sit with a cohort of people who are going through a process of learning how to interview people, how to listen to people, how to co-counsel and co-coach each other. And the the U, there's the U is treated as a diagram, and Otto Scharmer is counseling us that if we can have conversations with an open mind and an open heart and an open will, rather than many discussions are, well, I hear what you're saying, and I'm thinking while you're speaking, building up the point that's going to be my riposte when you finish, right? And a lot of dialogue doesn't even go, that's debate. Is I'm listening to you in order that I can prepare to score points off you and win. And we need to be much more open in our listening, much more curious in our listening is the word. And then Sharma's saying, well, how about being open-hearted as well, compassionate? And then how about being open-willed? And that takes a bit of explaining, but it's basically courage. It's I'm completely open, whatever emerges here. And Sharma calls that point, that still point of being open mind, open heart, open will, no agenda to impose. He calls that presencing. And I think what Quakers do at their best is presencing, but they certainly don't know how to teach it. And so there's something to learn there of a methodology for being in meetings and so on. So I'm proposing a curriculum for Quakers based on something more universal than Quakerism, which is what Sharma has done. He's taken the best of many, many, many systems and turned it into a kind of operating system for what he calls the book that comes from this is a textbook called Theory U. But there's a book called Leading from the Emerging Future. And the idea is that you are listening to what the planet and the future need. Being open to that. And it's only when you're not there with an agenda and you're sitting there presencing. And it's lovely that, we're having this chance to talk about this today, and that I got to talk about this with Richard Drake last night. But I think, we've done a couple of years, we got 100 talks, we know how to edit stuff. Now we have the opportunity to integrate this in the Quaker community, but we have a massive shift in our local culture with investment. And it's the opportunity to sort of uplift our local Quaker network in some way.
I completely agree with that, David. I've been wanting to get one thing in that really bothers me. I really dislike the idea of it being called chat. Maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know what it is, but I object. In fact, I really object. Not chat. No. We do chat, and that's very pleasant too, and it's very valuable. But to just designate the whole project as chat, I think it's inaccurate, and we will get, I don't know what people will come for, but the people we want to reach, I don't think they will answer to that word. I haven't got another suggestion though, but maybe some other people have.
Graham?
I haven't got a suggestion, but there could be a challenge for all of us to think up a better name for this discussion group, which will help it, first of all, to develop within the area meeting and perhaps to other parts of the yearly meeting. What I wanted to say was in response to David's enlightening conversation with Richard last night. I had a book put into my hands at the meeting where I was looking at it last night and introduced to the concept of Theory U for the first time. And now it's a coincidence that David is talking about it. It's The book is by Jocelyn Dawes, who had an Eva Koch scholarship to study the relationship between Quaker concept of discernment and the theory U principle. There's the I don't know whether you can see it.
Great.
There's the diagram that David was talking about.
Yep.
Of the U shape and enclosing the principles of dialogue with an open mind, open heart, and open will. And I thought last night, well, I'm never going to get through this. It's only just over 100 pages, but it all seems rather too abstruse. And anything with diagrams tends to put me off unless they're really helpful. Well, I'm inspired by David to go back to this book and actually read it and see what I can learn from it. Thank you.
And there's a free course run every September in the practice of this. Angela, sorry.
I think if we used a term such as informed Quaker discussion, that would convey that we're all participating, but that we've actually done some sort of preparation about the topic. You know, it says the topic is, say it's firefighting, it's not, but so we would go away and think, well, how is my house, you know, set up for firefighting? So if we need to have not just discussion, but 2 adjectives before that to actually precisely locate what participants are going to come and be involved in. I don't know. I mean, involved discussion. There's lots of ways of doing it, but I think that the advertisement or the notice you put out should somehow convey what we are going to be expected to do. And, you know, those are my first thoughts anyway.
The advantage of Quaker chat is that it's only 3 syllables.
But chat's what you stop. If you're a teacher, you stop all that chat and actually ask for a discussion. It's the teacher in me, sorry.
I think it's probably, although I wasn't much of a teacher, I think it's the teacher in me maybe as well. But to me, chat is something light. And although we often are light, we don't meet to be light. And, you know, we meet to look at something which is of interest and to hear other people's views on that. I do agree, though, that discussion isn't quite the right. That's not quite right either. I'm happy to change, but I'm just not yet quite sure to what.
Yeah, I had quite a long talk with Richard, and another bit that came up was the whole concept of if you get to any depth in a discussion, for a lot of people, it surfaces trauma. So I studied in Germany with Thomas Hübel, who deals with Holocaust trauma. He's a remarkable man, and if you get to one sort of little item of news was they tried to offer therapy in Israel for Holocaust survivors, and all that it did was increase the suicide rate because you're tackling hidden trauma. And Bristol skates along on an ice of dried blood, basically. You know, Bristol's cheerful way of getting along and everything is that we have a city built on blood from the slave trade, and we are not tackling people's individual trauma and the trauma that we have created in the world from slavery. So, you know, I think it's it's important to get to the point where we are comfortable with having dialogue that goes deep enough that it tackles wounds. You know, they had problems with Germany with talking about Holocaust. What changed things in Germany was the war in Syria, because they were able to take in 1 million refugees of people who were traumatized, and it was somehow just a little bit at second length, right? But it was what we saw was a wave of people going to Germany who were in real need, and Angela Merkel just said, "We can handle it." And what we didn't see was the understanding within the German population that this was somehow about redemption.
You mentioned a little bit then about trauma. I have a old mate of mine who at the moment works at a psychiatric hospital in Jerusalem. And they get lots of people there who have come because they believe that the end times are coming, and they will start, this will start in Jerusalem. And they, as it doesn't happen, they get more and more paranoid and about this. And he said, you know, that is something which over the years, they have had quite a number of people who come there because, you know, they believe in that. This is another trauma. It's another kind of classical. He says that a number of them are from the American Christian right, who believe, you know, these things are going to happen, and that's part of Christianity, I guess, you know, which is, you know, can be differently traumatic to some people.
Well, and there are reports today about the standard of education in Jewish Hasidic schools in London, where children are emerging from an education barely able to speak English. And, you know, that, so this is the problem with fundamentalism everywhere, is it causes trauma, because you're creating children who are not adjusted to any kind of normality.
Well, after that very depressing type of thing. So
oh yes, it's dropped off.
do you think we've got a bit further than we needed to today, Patsy?
Yeah, I'm mainly concerned about this titles business because I'm the one who sends it out every you know, I really want to get the title right of what we are. Could we continue to think about it, but also could people, if you have any thoughts plural about it, if you could email me, and I will keep them in a box, the beauty of computers, and to lead to further discussion on another occasion. We'll have to leave it with the immediate future, but I do think we ought to act. I think, as David's been saying, more people are kind of hearing about this and kind of tuning in. But we must try and get it right. Perhaps we could have a month to, and then we have to make a plunge. What do you think? Choose a name for ourselves by the end of the month. Is that realistic?
Meanwhile, we'll stick with discussion. Meanwhile,
Yeah. Any disagreeing voices, please say. I know you're not meant to say disagree in Quakerism, is it? I'm sorry about that. I mean, I haven't had time to try any discernment here. Okay. So we will reconvene on the subject, and please keep in touch. Yes. So thank you, Ray. Sorry.
So we don't lose something which Graham said earlier about Roger Angeston and his daughter. Do you wish to communicate with Roger and your daughter, or would you like me or someone else to do so?
I'd be quite happy to telephone Roger Angerson, and I see my daughter occasionally, so I could ask her as well.
Okay, then.
That would be great. Yeah, thank you. I'll just write that down. Won't be a second.
Any other business? Any other business? Well, I've also got things like websites and movie nights and things like that, but not for now, I guess.
Yes,
Okay.
okay, so we're just going to keep in touch about it
Yeah.
and think about it, but we feel we ought to change the name to something better soon. Okay.
Where are we next week, Patsy?
Oh golly, I don't. Oh, how embarrassing! I don't know. Has anyone got it in front of them? Obviously.
I usually write it down, but I haven't written it
Yeah,
down.
me too. But I was relaxed into a state of full security.
Could you send the things to my mailbox next time you're on the computer? Because I'm, as my brothers and sisters say, I am a bear of very little brain, so I forgot to
sure.
do.
It is in last week's notices, and it will be again in this week's notices. That, of course, only goes to our meeting. It doesn't. But I did also send them round to all the area meetings.
Right.
Graham,
I get notices from Horfield, and Judy always gives them, puts them in, her weekly. So
right.
Horfield always gets them. Next week I have a GP appointment, so I won't see you.
Oh, that's a shame. Graham, your turn.
This is changing the subject. The blue plaque for Hilda Cashmore is being unveiled at what is now called the Wellspring Settlement, but it's the old University Settlement in Barton Hill, renamed. Next Wednesday, the 8th of March at 12 noon. And Helen Meller, the author of the biography of Hilda Cashmore, which I summarized for you some time ago, will be one of the speakers. And another woman is talking about her Hilda Cashmore as well. I may add a few words about her Quaker connections. There's limited space at the settlement because this ceremony will be followed by refreshments, but have to be indoors. And I think it's the cafe room which is being used for this. So I'm limiting the invitation to come to members of Central Meeting. I don't think it would be of great interest to the rest of the area meeting, but area meeting invested £200 in the cost of making and installing this blue plaque. So I think certainly 2 or 3 Quakers ought to be there to see it unveiled. Next Wednesday, 8 o'clock. Sorry, next Wednesday, the 8th of March, and it's at 12 noon. Thank you.
Great.
Yes. We, I think, now have come to the end of a discussion. And next Friday, we hopefully will meet again with maybe a few others.
Social Services in Avon County, Jenny Smith.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Always worth a listen to, is Jenny.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. She's going to get arrested one of these days. Then we shall all be parading outside with placards of it.
waving her stick.
Yes.
Okay, everyone. See you soon.
See you soon.